Bring in our political panel. Liz Smith is the former deputy campaign manager for Martin O'Malley's 2016 White House campaign, and Alexandra Smith is the executive director of America Rising. Not related.
Not that I know of.
Here together on the panel. Could we just start with Al Franken? Just in the last hour, he gave a press conference. It took a few questions addressing allegations of sexual misconduct. Let's take a listen to what he said.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to start my job. I'm going to go back to work. I'm going to work as hard as I can for the people of Minnesota, and I'm going to start that right now. Thank you all. Thank you.
So, Alexandra, let me start with you. Do you think that that will assuage the critics who are saying that he should have resigned?
I don't think so, because it speaks to a double standard that I find particularly troubling. You know, at America Rising, we do opposition research, and this is exactly the kind of thing that we would put before voters before an election for them to evaluate. We do opposition research partly so that voters don't have buyer's remorse at the end of the day. So why should an elected official, someone who is a guardian of the public trust, get any kind of special treatment, get, an ethics hearing, get special, training, counseling, something, just because they're in elected office? In my opinion, they're not just any kind of employer. They should be held to a higher standard, and this is what really troubles me about this entire incident.
Well, and apparently, Liz, there is not necessarily more to come about Al Franken, but Jake Sherman, who was on Harris Faulkner's show on Outnumbered Overtime, said he knows that he himself and reporters all across Capitol Hill are chasing down leads because they believe there are more stories to come, perhaps from both sides of the aisle. What are you hearing from your friends or sources on Capitol Hill about how they feel about this as staffers?
Well, look, I think that there is a lot of frustration that, as Democrats are going out there and rightly criticizing people like Roy Moore, who allegedly, preyed on young women, on 14-year-old girls, that on the other hand, we're standing by and turning a blind eye to people like John Conyers and Al Franken. And the charges against Franken are not in doubt. And to Alex's point, I agree. Our elected officials should be held to a higher standard. Al Franken should be held to a higher standard. And we can't claim to have any moral high ground against Republicans as long as we stand by and let these guys sit in these seats. Democrats in Congress should show more leadership and call on these guys to step down. Look, I know it's not easy. I know sometimes it's tough to shake up the party that way, but it's important that we lead by example on this and show that our own representatives are not above the law or subject to some different set of rules.
It's a strong and principled stand. We appreciate you telling us that. Let me just ask you about tax reform, because we got word today that Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, he says that the bill isn't perfect. He's not getting everything that he wanted, but that he will be a yes. Is that a big moment for the Republicans, Alexandra?
I think so, because if you'll remember, we know that Senator Rand Paul had a little bit more difficulty getting to the finish line on health care. So the fact that he's not only moving towards a yes, but came out with such a strong public statement, I think is really encouraging. I mean, look, I think that both senators and members of the House realize that this is an existential imperative for the party. We need to pass tax reform in order to be viable in the midterm elections, and in order to fulfill the agenda promises that President Donald Trump made. So I think that whether you look at Senator Rand Paul or you look at Senator Daines trying to help Senator Johnson get across the finish line, there's a lot going on.
This
that
is
I think is very positive.
all the sort of the deal making is happening. Liz, what do you think that the Democrats are thinking this week as they look towards the Republicans? Republicans saying that they've got momentum to actually get this done.
Well, look, I think the Democrats are thinking that, one, that this policy would be bad for the country, but two, that Republicans are handing us a little bit of a political gift. Alex just said something about, Donald Trump delivering on his campaign promises. But the campaign Donald Trump that I remember was someone who went out there, railed against Wall Street, spoke out about the forgotten men and women of America. And the people who would be left behind by this tax reform bill are people who make under $100,000 a year. It is exactly the forgotten men and women that he championed. So look, this is him being at odds with what he promised on the campaign trail. And look, when you have headlines saying that the poorest Americans are going to suffer the most under this bill, that is a political problem for Republicans.
This is where the messaging war is going to get very interesting, because people have points on both sides, and we appreciate you being here, Liz and Alexandra, both Smith.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you, Dana.